Hi, Gail.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Can you pull your camera down a little, or is it?
You went down like this?
Oh yeah, the
Is that
sun was.
better?
Yeah, it was just the top of your head, and the sun was coming across it, so it just looked like a shadow.
It is a shadow.
No, no, I mean now it's gone.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I'm not good at setting these up.
Okay. No
So
worries. So how are you doing? How's your friend
I'm
doing?
my friend actually she had a fairly decent outcome.
Yeah.
We're gonna go over there this afternoon and check on her.
Okay.
But all things considered, not bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not bad. So it's not an easy thing.
No, but I think it's a pretty good success rate, right? Usually.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean, it sucks that
Absolutely.
it has to be done, but
Yeah.
at least the success rate's pretty high on it.
Yeah, they are.
So, how are things? How's pandemic life been? How's the opera house? I know that you're kind of trying to do some things however you can. I don't know how to word it.
So we went to the Broad last night, which is our local theater
Mm-hmm.
for Santa Monica. And I used to teach at Santa Monica College for over 20 years. And
Okay.
anyway, I helped create the opera program that ultimately went into the Broad in 2008. So it was kind of like coming home for me.
Mm-hmm.
We are on schedule to do a concert in May, but obviously it has to be way scaled down because I'm not allowed to use symphony orchestra um, more than once a week at any particular venue. Is part of AB 2257.
So
So
you can't even take the 52 weeks of a year and accumulate three into 1 week.
no, it's per week.
Every time I talk about this, I get more mad. Every time I find a different thing that I hear about this, it's like more annoying.
And a vocalist, if a vocalist is used, um, she or he can perform their own music, no problem. But if they're singing somebody else's music without royalties, which is most opera is public domain, they have to become employees.
So unless they write their own opera.
Yeah, unless they're doing their own opera, singing their own music, or getting royalties.
So what about in your case, because it's a little bit unique where yeah, they didn't write it, but it's such old music that you're bringing back around that really nobody else is doing it. I mean,
And it's still under the estate of the composer because it's not long enough ago. It's what 99 years plus whatever. And these people died like in the 40s and 50s,
mhm.
so it's not public domain. So I pay royalties to the company that I rent the music from. I pay
Mhm.
royalties to them, but it doesn't relate to the singer, to the performer.
So yeah, I mean that's really weird. I there was a thing that I need to look into this on how it's being done because I've actually worked with the venue. It's up in Marin County. It's called Terrapin Station or Terrapin Crossroads. It's owned by Phil Lesh, the bass player from the Grateful Dead,
Oh,
and
my
it's
husband's a deadhead.
yeah. So well, and I used to go to tons of shows, and I've actually met
Right.
Phil and stuff, and it's really great venue. But somehow he's taken all the people that come through that venue and he's put them under an LLC of some sorts. Like even if they just like Warren Haynes, let's say he comes and plays a show, he's an employee for a day or something. I don't really understand what's going on there, but it was a total to get around AB5.
So I'm confused because the business to business clause
Mm-hmm.
I thought wasn't usable.
Right.
So I don't know. I would love to know how he's doing this. I know that I'm the people that I'm going to be working with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
right?
There's going to be a lot of sort of quiet action.
I mean, how does the symphony orchestra even get by?
Well, if they belong to a big orchestra, so let's say they're LA Phil or LA Opera,
Mm-hmm.
um, then they're fine. But with for us,
Why are they employees?
yeah.
Oh, okay,
But the people that jump around,
right.
or I wonder if somebody who even subs for one night, what that does for them. I
Mm-hmm.
know that another larger opera company down here is absolutely not even paying attention to it. A
Okay.
fairly good size. I mean, they're
I've
just saying
yeah, I've
every
talked to a few businesses that are just like whatever.
yeah,
And I'm like,
because it
I've even like, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but I say like, you could get in trouble for that. And they're like, I don't care. I'm gonna do this, and then if I have to, I'll fight it.
right.
I don't know what that actually looks like, but I would think that I don't know. I would think there's a whole slew of attorneys that are ready to take on this junk law.
I think so. I know that I think I mentioned to you before, but of the last production I did in 2019, I
Mm-hmm.
had about 50 performers. They all signed contracts and they were all 1099s. One of the string players filed unemployment
Okay.
as me with me as the employer.
Oh no.
I only paid him $650 for everything. So I didn't know anything about it because it was being sent. Initially I got a form from EDD asking me if I wanted to protest it. So of course I sent them back the contracts. I sent them back the fact that we did file him with California's with the California income tax, and so then I didn't hear anything back for quite a while, and then I get another notice saying that I'm in the rears $25,000 for a $650 employee. I had never been getting the information.
Was that a fine?
Yeah,
That wasn't like you're in the rears, meaning like you owe because of something something. It was a fine.
it
Like
was a
you did
fine.
this and boom.
It was a fine. So I they had two addresses for me. They had one that went to Numi Opera
Mm-hmm.
at a different address on my street, but a different address.
Okay.
So I had never received those forms. Fortunately for me, I got a hold of one of their tax people who explained to me how I go through the system and start deleting and basically disclaiming these very. I mean, this was during the pandemic. Nobody's working, and that they're incurring fines on top of fines during a time when they know damn well nobody's working,
I
but
know.
yet they're sending millions of dollars to the California Penal Institutes. You knew
Right.
this, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And out of state, people are signing up for fake unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it ended up costing
People
me
are
the hundred.
stealing unemployment.
Yeah,
I mean, a
exactly.
lot of it's being wasted just by people
Yes.
hacking and stealing, and
Yes.
the whole thing's been a joke. I I think when we talked the first time, I told you I used to run a couple bars here in Denver, and we had a
Yeah.
lot of live music and stuff, and so I know all the local musicians, and a lot of them went on PUA for a while. And Colorado was one of the first states to get hit big with clawbacks, so they've all been getting these notices saying you owe 10 grand.
That they have to pay it back?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, because like one of my friends had 2 weeks of gigs with a big musician and earned a bunch of money, but the rest of the pandemic he didn't have but a couple of shows here and there around town. But he was doing he had to fill in for somebody that got sick for on a tour on a nationwide tour, and he filled in for 2 weeks and made a good amount of money. And now they want 10 grand back. But I this is happening to other people too. Like there's a article I'll send you later that, and I had the guy on the podcast. There's a functioning autistic Uber driver who took and and he lives with his mom, but he lives with his mom not because he's autistic. He lives with his mom because she can't take care of herself. So
So
it's just the
he's
two.
taking care of her.
So he's taking care of her. And what he did was put in, I don't know if I know you've never had to probably deal with Uber and the taxes.
No.
Right. So they send you a 1099K, and this is changing next year, but the 1099K that they send you, the bottom line number says, here's what you made. But the thing is you have to take that number, and they don't explain this. And you have to take that number and then take all the service fees of Uber out. Because what they're saying is this is how much you made because technically they're your clients. So anything charged to those clients needs to be you. So he put that total line number and they based his state UI on that. And instead of giving him the 200 that they gave most gig workers as just the base, they gave him like 700 plus the PUA. He was doing really well. And then all of a sudden he owed $14,000 because they're like, you put in the wrong number. You put
they
in.
They know those are not his direct clients.
Yeah.
They're come through his service.
Well, this is the state now doing it.
Oh, Jesus.
And it makes me wonder if the state's just like, well, you entered it wrong. And it's like, well, yeah, but Uber sent, when I get a 1090, and I told him when I had him on the podcast, I said, this is ridiculous. And it's actually, I'll send you the newspaper article, but also the podcast, because he's a really intelligent guy, really smart. He stayed laser focused for like 45 minutes when we were talking. He's just a really cool guy too. And he literally was like, all I did was enter what the 1099Ks told me to. And I'm like, I know it's a mistake that a lot of people get into. It's just like they can't provide us training videos or safety videos when we sign up, because then they cross that, are you an employee thing?
Right.
But with the 1099K, I think that's different. And I think that's always been a big BS marker. Like, come on, you should have to deduct those service fees, because I understand what they're doing. It's again trying to protect that employee model, but it's like not everybody knows to go back and take the stuff out. Most people who have had 1099s in the past, you've had them,
yeah.
When you have 1099s, you just take that number and put it in.
Right.
You shouldn't have to do beyond math.
No.
And Uber, I don't understand how Uber, I don't want to put this on them because I think that none of this this is a whole different situation, but I don't understand how, during all this AB5 confusion pandemic, how is it that they're looking at people who, like this, who are entering the right number, but they're not seeing that Uber isn't giving I don't know. It just seems like Uber should be in a lot of trouble right now for that alone. Like, hey, you can't send these people bottom line numbers that they have to adjust.
They're hitting the wrong people.
Yeah. That's what I said a couple podcasts back. I said, this isn't like drug dealing. It's not like you're getting the little fish and they're going to lead you to the bigger ones.
Right.
I said, you're just picking on the little fish that can't help you at all.
And putting the little guy out of work who needs to be able to support himself, because
and his mom.
They're going to be fired.
Right. And his mom. He was actually run here in the Denver Post, and then the next day he was run nationwide, even in, I think, LA Post or LA Times.
Good.
So, yeah, it was a months back or whatever, but then I had him on. It was crazy. He's even said, I said, I want to be careful saying this here. And he's like, that I'm a functioning autistic. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, is that okay? He's like, yeah, that's what I am.
Did you watch the Saturday Night Live with Elon Musk?
Yeah.
When he comes out in his speech and he says, I'm probably the first Asperger's person you'll ever know that will host a show, or at least that you've been told.
Right. I have a friend who has a kid with Asperger's, and he's actually awesome. And it doesn't remind me of a lot of I know that there's a lot of different levels, but it doesn't even remind me of that. To me, he's just a genius.
Exactly.
I'm like,
exactly. I want to be that smart.
It's almost like, give me Asperger's. I'd love to be like that.
Think of how much we'd get accomplished.
But I do want to, really what I wanted to hit on was like, so I know you heard the Vina piece, and some other people did too. And just like when I've had Willie on, I just do it because I think that not enough podcasters and creators on YouTube and stuff do both sides of a thing.
Right.
Like I could all day long pull in people who agree with me. You know what I mean? That's easy to go out and find. Hey, do you agree with my views? Yeah, come on the podcast. But when I do that, I feel like I need to present the other sides on some of these issues. So I bring on the Willies from Gig Collective or the Venas. And I know that like some people were like, I got a couple of different criticisms on the Vena one that, hey, you didn't hit on it hard enough, or you really should have taken her to the ropes. First of all, you and I both know, had I done that, she'd have just hung up the phone.
She would have shut down.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if she just said bye. She might have just hung up.
Right.
But and then I've had a lot of people who I work with often who were like, no, that was a great first piece since you're doing a follow-up, because I didn't really understand AB5. These are people out of California. And I'm like, well, and they're like, and now I do. I'm like, good, because that's what ProX going to be.
Yes.
So now that you understand AB5, so that's why I'm happy with the piece. Like, yeah, not the hard questions came out, but at least like it was described in a way where you can understand it. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think it was the greatest job explaining why you should support AB5 on her part. I mean, I was kind of surprised. I thought she was going to be much more, like why you should, and it was going to sound good about it. But she actually presented it in a good way. But then when I got to like your example, when I brought up you specifically, because I'm like, because she was, I don't know, I can't exactly remember what was happening. We were talking about something, and I knew she was just wrong. So I had to use your example, because I'm like, all right, well, then let's talk about this nonprofit opera house and why the heck this would be affected. And then if you remember, she answered with all these, well, she could be an S corp or a cooperative, or I'm like, really? Because Gail's a smart person. She's been in business for many years, and I know other people who are in the same boat who can't do that. I mean, Lisa, is it Rothstein? Lisa Roth,
Rothstein.
yeah, Lisa Rothstein is an S corp, and she still got banged too. So that I didn't understand how Vena didn't understand that's not a protection.
I cannot believe that she didn't know. I think she was just picking at flies to sort of deflect.
Yeah.
Because she's a smart woman.
Right. I mean, I do give her that, and I also have said this. I do give her the fact that, God bless her for sticking with her guns no matter what it takes, but however, the way it gets presented to people, I think is incorrect. And I think there were a couple errors, and I think she avoided a couple questions, if you noticed.
Yes.
Though, I mean, some people were like, you should have asked her tougher questions. I'm like, go back and listen. I think I did. I just don't think she answered them.
She didn't answer a lot of questions where she sort of deflected and went on to something else.
But especially in the case of you, I felt
Yeah.
like, you're not giving me what I need here. I need to know why this happened to Gail. And you're saying S corp or cooperative, and then you moved into all these other reasons on why people need to be in unions, or without saying unions, but I mean, kind of alluding to what she sees as the correct path.
So when all of this started to come down, one of the things that Lorena Gonzalez was talking about was that we should all become S corps, and that the state of California would give us the first year for free, the $800 filing fee. Well, none of that ever happened, and some people did, never got their money back. Plus, the B2B business part of AB5 is not usable. So if I hire a hiring agency, they still are my employees.
Right.
That agency, if they bring me, like a contractor for an orchestra, for instance, typically I pay a contractor a straight fee or a percentage of what the overall value of the symphony is. But I would then become employer for everybody, because that B2B ain't happening.
Right.
They're not allowing it.
So here was a feeling I got. I want to know your view on this. I'm starting to wonder. So Vena's obviously, she has her role at Hastings as the professor of law. And like you said, she's a smart person, but I honestly felt like in that interview she was distancing herself from AB5 and trying to
She,
make it like, I didn't write AB5. And I looked it up. I'm like, yes, you alone did not. You and 74 other lawyers that were chosen around the country did, but you did. I mean, you can't say you didn't write it when you were one of 75 who did.
I felt as though in her saying that, because her name is not on the final bill, I mean, if you look up who wrote it and whose input was put into it, I think she was making reference to who wrote the final text.
Right. And I know lawyers have their ways of like, I didn't do it.
Right. But I think also because so much heat was brought upon her initially. I mean, she was doxxed by one of our people who ended up really getting in big trouble for it. Um, but she, we know she helped Gonzalez with the wording. We know,
Absolutely.
we know she helped put all of those facts together. But ultimately, it was Gonzalez and the Congress people that she works with that wrote the bill. So I think technically she didn't write it, but she did write it. She did create it.
Mm-hmm.
She and
And I
those.
absolutely think once it was written, she
Mm-hmm.
was the one who carried it forward almost
Yep.
solo.
Yep.
So, like, if you talk, I mean, that's what I was really confused by. Like, when she's like, listen, again, I didn't write it. I'm like thinking, I could say right now, you were one of 75 who even Wikipedia says
Yes.
you were one of the 75 drafters of AB5. But not only that, once it was drafted, the other 74 went back to their lives. You were or she was the one who who brought the movement.
Yep.
I
It was
mean, she seemed to
interesting.
be making it like, listen, I joined the movement on the side of the workers when I need to. And I was like, that's not how I remember it. And I knew her before AB5.
You did.
Well, I mean, just through communications, but
Right.
yes, I knew of her and I knew she was starting to get involved in this thing. I knew it from the very beginning when she was getting in. And then I saw what she was doing. And now I've seen her kind of backtracking. Part of me even wonders if she's kind of, even her, if she's like, why did I do this?
I'm sure
Career
she,
wise.
yeah, I'm sure she would rather not take the heat, but you know, being an ivory tower liberal is problematic. When you're living in a $2 million home and most of the people that we know are struggling to get by, even if the pandemic hadn't happened,
Right.
these people would still be out of work.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's, I mean, to me, it's hard to say. I mean, she said, she goes, so like Dynamex decision made it so that like last mile truck drivers had to be employees, which was needed. And I'm thinking, really? Because last mile trucking a lot of times is just independently owned trucking facilities within a city that pick up at a warehouse and deliver to a store.
Right.
So yeah, we need those peoples because your trucks can't go to those. They only go to the shipping facilities. So I was like, so why do they have to be employees? They own the truck. These are I mean, to me, this is all the same as owning your own business. I mean, I just didn't get it. Why can't these people help? Why can't this? I don't know. And then when I did bring up your scenario and the fact that she really didn't address it, and then even when she came back around, she couldn't even remember that you were in opera house or whatever. I can't remember how she worded it, but she's like, and then your friend that had the opera thing. And that for some reason that made me mad too. I was like, don't call it the opera thing. Like
So
I called it an opera house. You heard me. You know what I
yeah,
said.
yeah. So we're a gypsy company, which most opera companies don't have their own physical house. Theater companies more typically have their own physical building.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. We go from venue to venue,
Right.
um, stay at maybe one venue more than another venue. But anyway, we're I mentioned this to you before. We're considered a tier 4 opera company, which means that our income is below $100,000. No, sorry, below $1 million a year, which for normal people sounds like a lot of money.
Right.
If I put on one show with orchestra, including my singers, my managers, stage managers, my contractors, instrument rentals, instrument cartage, because I have to pay every time somebody needs to schlep his drums. I get to pay for that. He doesn't pick up that cost. Or if a harp cartage, I have to pick up that cost. I pay for the costumes. I pay for the makeup people. I pay for the rental of the sheet music. Obviously, I pay for the rental of the venue. I have to pay for ticket services. They take money off the top. I pay for my PR people. I pay for my marketing people. So I make nothing. In fact, I'm usually out of pocket by the end of a performance, which is because this is such an important thing to me, that so if I lose a little bit of money, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's like, that or buying a new pair of shoes. I don't care about the shoes.
Right.
So one performance that runs 1 week of rehearsal. So basically with an orchestra, what happens is you have 3 rehearsals, because they don't necessarily look at their music outside of the beginning rehearsal. Some people do, some people don't. Most people don't. If you're a union musician, you don't, or union choral, there's nothing that makes you know the music when you come into rehearsal. It's expected that you're going to be taught the music in rehearsal, which I never got, because we were in college. You had to know your music when you walked into a rehearsal, but that's neither here nor there. Then there's 2 days of going through the music. We have 1 day of tech, tech / dress rehearsal, because I can't afford more than that. And then 2 performances. So basically, we have 1 week from beginning to end.
Right.
That 1 week can cost up to $250,000. So
now or pre?
Well, now it would be more.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm kind of trying to wonder, like in just a guesstimate.
1919. So this is 1919. Sorry, 2019.
Right.
The last full performance that I did. Because then we went into AB5 pre-pandemic. We went into AB5. Had a board meeting. My board president said to me, so this is when the additional 30% for payroll taxes and insurance I have to have, because if somebody, God forbid, gets hurt, the venue requires insurance. So there's, insurance is already happening. It's the payroll aspect of it, taking out the SDI and all that stuff. That's an additional 30%. So if I can only do 1 performance a week based on the carve-out section of AB5, which is called AB2257,
right,
I'm only allowed to do 1 performance a week. Where are my ticket sales? Do I have any ticket sales? Do I have anything?
And do you do all those by, I'm guessing that you would have to do all those through yourself, because you couldn't afford to take the hit from a ticket master or a live
we do though. So whatever venue, each venue typically has their own ticket sales company that they work with. And so I have to pay a percentage to them. And even if we go outside, let's say it's a non-union house who doesn't use a specific ticket sale company, I have to, because I have to use somebody who's going to deal with the ticket sales outside of me, because I have things published. The minute you have a show published in a newspaper, you need to have where they can buy tickets underneath. And it's not going to be some grandma next door to me who's selling tickets for me, picking up the phone and saying, hello, new me opera.
Right.
People use credit cards. They go directly into, so we have so many levels where money is being exchanged openly. It's not like we're hiding it. We're not getting cash under the table.
Right.
We're working in the 21st century. So people are going to do things by credit card. People are, they're going to, if we advertise, we have to pay for the advertising costs. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. So for me to do 1 show, if I don't use an orchestra, I can get away with about $100,000. So the additional 30%, that would be put on top for payroll, um, just put me out, put
Right.
me
Of
out.
course.
A
Of
friend of
course.
mine who's has a company in San Diego tried to do a legitimized an AB5 correct performance, and it cost her so much money that she said, "I'm done. I'm done. I can't do it." Aside from the additional hours that we as founders, CEOs, we do everything. We hire everybody except if we contract with the orchestra. We hire the singers, we hire the conductors. Oh yeah, we also have to pay for people when they stay because I use singers that are international singers and they come from out of town. I have to pay to put them up. I have to pay for their rental cars. I have to pay their agent. You know, it's not like this is just an easy, oh, let's throw together a show and we're in high school and everybody's having a good time. This is like a thing. So the
Right.
people that we hire are professionals. This gives them an opportunity to perform a professional role. And yes, they get paid very well. Um, so when they talk about minimum wage, it's laughable. Minimum wage is the parking for one day,
Right. Or if even.
if even, right?
Yeah.
So my this whole system has been around since probably before Gonzalez was born, where we have regional theater, regional nonprofit opera companies, dance companies. They get their experience. They graduate school, they go to school as a musician, as a dance major, as an instrumentalist major. They get their degrees, they go on to these tier 4 companies where they get all their experience. Then they start auditioning for the bigger companies. If they're lucky, they'll get a gig with a bigger company. But how long does that bigger company take care of them or use them on stage? Maybe a couple weeks. Then they have to go to another company. Now, let's say we're talking tier 1, 2 companies, like LA Opera, San Francisco Opera. If they're lucky and they get to the Met, they're still only there for maybe a month at the most. They have to get work someplace else. So between PROACT and AB5, this may absolutely kill this type of theater slash music. It's just not going to be able to be feasible. And then they tried to pass this thing, SB 805, that supposedly Lorena was in favor of initially, but she's also on the Appropriations Committee. She's chair of Appropriations. So Newsom didn't sign it. He rejected it and sent it back to Appropriations. All of a sudden, Lorena's saying, we already accounted for payroll. Why should we be doing a state payroll system? We've already accounted for it. We have 50 million, what was it, $50 million set aside for payroll. $50 million set aside for payroll? For
Right.
which company? For that's supposed to be for everybody? When California has so much money right now? It's just beyond.
Yeah, it is just beyond. And that's another thing too, is that I guess I never even after we did our first interview, um, I didn't really understand how on earth you as a, because is it a 501c
C3, yeah.
c3 a 501c3? Okay, so I didn't understand why this even affects you. You're nonprofit.
I wonder the same thing myself, but
I mean, I
apparently,
wish it wouldn't have affected anybody, but you specifically. That's why I
right,
used your example
right.
with Vina, was because why would this affect her?
I'm a nonprofit.
That's
I
what I mean.
I fall under the
And
education aspect of nonprofits because what we do, we go to the community, community comes to us, we're helping people along on their learning curve. So I mean, double tax in the state of California is not anything new, right? You pay
no,
taxes during your life, you pay a death tax.
yep. Well, I mean, I'm just, it even, my mom has worked with a few 501c3s. And in fact, she was the director for BIBA, which is the Boulder Independent Business Alliance. Like what
Really?
they're, they kept like Walmart out of Boulder's kind of the Republic of Boulder. it's it's a different world from the rest of Colorado.
Well, that's
but it's
okay.
a but it's a great town. And she was part of that movement to like really push independent businesses and littler
Mm-hmm.
companies and stuff. And they're 501c3. I mean, like, I can't even imagine if they were touched. Boulder would go nuts and not let it happen, because they'd be like, hey, this group and these other groups that are nonprofits with the 50, because from what I know, the 501c3 is not easy to acquire.
No,
I mean, that's not just something you just put in an application for and they're like, okay. Like from what I understand, there's some digging, there's some research. They want to make sure there's no scamming or anything weird going on. So if you were granted that, I just don't see at all how that affects you.
the government stays pretty well on top of us. We have to continually respond to them. They send us, I mean, we have to file yearly whether we make money or not. Um, I pay,
Which I'm guessing you do.
of course. I mean,
Right.
I want to stay, I want to stay in business. I mean, I'm trying to stay in business. I went to an amazing concert last night, and there was a critic there from the LA Times who was very favorable to us during our last show because we had done something that nobody was doing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I had, where did I just go? I had mentioned to him that we were doing a recital format because the state of California would not allow us to use a full symphony for more than one day. And he said, yes, I'm unfortunately familiar with it.
And that
And
was
he's
it.
a critic for the LA Times. I mean, he has no pull on it.
Yeah, right. Well, that I guess that becomes a big question. Who does have pull on it other than Lorena?
Gavin,
Right. Well, I mean, but he's not going to do anything.
no.
I mean, he let people die their businesses during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
that should have been a red flag right there. Like, okay, AB5 passed, but guess what, guys? This pandemic we did not expect. We need to delay AB5 going into effect, which would have allowed more time to dissect it too. But he knew that was needed. He knew all these people were going to go out of work.
So why don't you just put put a halt on it for the time when people are unable to go into the office and they can actually work from their homes? It's a very interesting. I grew up in a home where my father was a Republican and my mother was a Democrat. So they always figured they canceled each other's votes. My father had the old time saying that if you're not a Democrat when you're young, you don't have a heart, and if you're not a Republican when you're older, you don't have a brain. So this is
I
my
kind
dad
of get
grew up.
I kind of can relate to that. I got to say,
I'm a centrist. I really am.
because
You know,
I don't want to say I'm either, but I kind
no,
of can relate to what you're saying there or
you
what
know,
he said.
I've gotten very conservative in my old age. I mean, I believe in certain social programs, absolutely, but I also believe that people should get off their asses and work. I'm allowed to say act.
Yeah, you are.
I've been
You're good.
working since I was 17,
Yeah,
actually no, my first I cleaned my first toilet when I was 15.
right.
So I mean, this is what people do.
Yeah.
This is the normalcy. So when I see this guy who's got slick back hair, grew up with money, has their
Mm-hmm.
kids in private school, so money has no meaning to him because he's never really had to earn it. Giving it away, and then the very people who need the ability to work, taking care of their moms, children at home, children that have disabilities at home, the very people that he's giving money to, all they're asking is leave us some pride, allow us to work, and don't take the ability of us to work away during this time period. Reassess it when things get back to normal. My husband's in the restaurant, or was in the restaurant business.
Mm-hmm.
He closed the restaurants. with no
I've been
scientific
in that for
data.
years. So I got to say, I already know what a tough business that is without this kind of crap.
I mean, with no scientific data, he closed restaurants. If a restaurant was fortunate enough to have its own parking lot, they
Mm-hmm.
were able to get by because then they could build outside. And a lot of cities were very helpful in helping to create lanes where parking cars would normally park and set up little booths so people could actually come and eat and there'd be some money. Not so with my husband's restaurants.
Yeah.
No, there was no parking. So, and now he has to pay back his PPPs or whatever it is.
Right. I watched Joe Rogan yesterday say he was talking about, just a sidetrack. He was talking about all these COVID max mandates and all this, that, and the other. And he was saying somebody asked him back, his guest asked him back, well, what how like, well, we need the COVID mandates and checks and vaccines. And he goes, listen, I don't care what anybody does. He goes, but there's an easy way to get past all that. He goes, just fly to Mexico and walk back across the border and you won't have to have a mandate, which I thought was just hysterical, I got to say, because I was like, I know it's a joke and I know he's a comedian on top of being his
Right,
podcaster, but I was like,
right.
made a lot of sense to me. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
nothing makes sense anymore.
Nothing does.
Nothing, nothing.
No. There's no normalcy. Everything is slanted. So much shit is made up. So many people have ideas
And fear propaganda.
and fear. So much fear propagation.
Right. I mean, I got a thing from my son's school the other day, and I've been very impressed lately because he's in high school, he's a sophomore, and they really haven't sent out much. There's been only a couple COVID cases, and they send us notifications. Hasn't treated it like the last year, but they sent out.
So
But
I
but
print.
how would you how if you were on that call with us
Mhm.
and you were able to speak during the call, and I asked her that same question again and she gave that same kind of answer, how would you come in and what would you say to that?
So based on the legislation that's current, we basically are unable to function unless we can afford to function. So, a system that has worked for well over 50 years of these small companies existing, producing the arts, the creative people, giving people opportunities to perform, paying them well in order for them to perform, will no longer be able to exist. So, what they've done in their ferocity of going after the app based companies, the little baby tunas that got caught in the net, will die. And it doesn't seem that they care. They're so intent on being right about this unionization of things that do not need to be unionized, about the moms at home, about mom and pop businesses who have gone out of business. Only the big corporations will be left.
Right.
Is that what they want? Was that their intent? Because to me, I'm all about mom and pops. I don't shop at Ralph's. I shop at my corner store that's owned by one person. I
Right.
only go to Rite Aid because they have my prescriptions.
Right.
But I go out of my way to give my money to somebody other than Amazon.
Sure.
Um, that's how we take care of each other. They have made it literally impossible for the mom and pops, arts organizations, small businesses, anything to survive. Caretakers,
Mm-hmm.
who's when my mom was sick for 2 years, I was there every single day. If I hadn't had a nighttime job teaching at night, how would I have survived and be there to be able to take care of my mom? Most people have daytime jobs
Right.
and children and take care of their elderly parents.
So
Go
Okay.
ahead,
Well, here's my last follow-up to the question then.
please.
So if given now what I've seen, you're in California, so I'm very interested to hear what you say. What This is two parts. What is the Has the unions even grown? Because I don't think they have.
No,
This
they
was
have
all to
not.
help the unions, and I don't think it's helped them at all. Number two, um, how many jobs has AB5 created?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. But is it truly zero? Is it really zero, or are there some little sects that got?
I'm not aware of any. I
Because
mean,
I
there
can't find any. I'm not kidding. I know
exactly
you just said zero, but I can't find any jobs that were
right.
created because of AB5.
No, jobs were killed, not created.
Right, we know that, but I'm
Yeah.
saying they're pushing that AB5 was going to help create employment, and I don't see that it's happened at all.
One quick question that I would love for you maybe to be able to ask her is why is part of the music industry carved out and not classical musicians? Why are classical musicians taking it in the shorts?
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't even aware that was happening. That's just
Yeah.
another thing. Whenever I
Classical
hear all this stuff,
musicians,
so
theater actors, dance companies,
mm-hmm.
all anything that's remotely in the classical arts has not been even addressed. I mean, and there's such small language that could be changed to give us the freedom to survive. More than one performance a week at the same venue. It costs a fortune for us to get up and move around from place to place once we've started a show.
Sure.
Um, it just anyway, it's all
Yeah,
crazy.
like music should have been music. First of
Yes,
all, this never should have even happened. I mean,
agreed.
all of this never should have happened because, and it's very apparent to the listeners listening right now. I know we've talked about this a lot, and Vina was just a few weeks ago, but honestly, to the people who are listening that know this, obviously a bill like AB5 that had to go back and have 100,000 carve outs and still didn't get everybody that needed it carved out was not a bill that ever should have been passed into law. People should have known from the get-go this is a junk bill. It needs to be redone because obviously AB 2257 was proof of that. Anesthesiologists, interpreters, this, that, the other, they all had to be carved out. And then
Should
it's
have
still
never.
and it's still left, like okay, well now we're carving music out. But now, and I hear about new things all the time. You just informed me that classical music wasn't carved out. I didn't know that.
Right.
Like I thought music was carved out. Well, classical music is music. What's going on?
Because there was this one gentleman, Ari Herstadt, I believe is his last name.
Okay.
He was very proactive, and he put together. He basically became a lobbyist um, during 2019. So and into early 2020. So he was able to exact a carve out. Classical musicians, he didn't represent us, which, okay, whatever. I mean, I don't, to me, if one person is not represented, then none of the group should be represented. But
Exactly.
I am not, because I got mine doesn't mean that, okay, I got mine, you have to worry about you. No,
Right.
it should be everyone. If you're going to be a true socialist, you take care of everybody.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't see how. I figured by the time maybe a year ago when you and I first met that by now this would have all been cleaned up.
Right.
And it seems like nothing's cleaned up, and in fact maybe even things are worse.
Things are worse. When Gavin just signed a bill about, and I don't remember which union it was, that when he was mandated that everyone have vaccinations,
Right.
there was one union, and I can't remember if it was the oil workers union or something like that, that has a big stake in the state of California, that he had to sign something saying that they didn't have to mandate their workers be vaccinated. So what I would like to do is send you copies of the bills that directly affect classical musicians. I'll just email them to you,
Yeah, that'd be great.
and I'll highlight the sections that.
Because I will ask her that. Because another question, like I said with you, is that, I want to know how many jobs were created. That's a big deal to me.
It is a big
My
deal.
guess is that it won't be answered, or it'll be walked around, or it'll be I don't know. Again, I don't know, and I'm not trying to put a bad vibe out there, but I don't know. But I felt like if I were to guess, I feel like she's trying to distance herself at this point from AB5.
I would if I were she.
Right. I mean, as much as it seemed like that was her path to what she was all about, I feel like now she's like, listen, I didn't write it. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. I'm like, you're really defensive for this AB5 thing that we all know you were very involved in.
Yeah.
You can't say that. I mean, I don't know. You just can't say that, like, well, I didn't really have anything to do with it. Well, we can, I have it. I have the internet at my house, Vina. I can look it up. You did. You had a lot to do with it and the movements that followed.
Right.
So, um, yeah, please send it to me.
I
And
will.
I really want to thank you for coming on again. If when we sign off here, if you could wait 1 minute, I want
Okay.
to turn off the recording. I want to ask you one thing, but
Of course.
thank you for coming on today, Gail.
Thank
That was,
you.
yeah. Um,
Appreciate it.
yeah, I mean, I'm going to play this, but I think that I can play this after I do the follow up with Vina,
Okay.
because I think that if I do this out of order, this could make her maybe perhaps, because other people were like, why didn't you go so hard on her? I'm like, because I would have never got the first interview, or I would have never got the follow up. Wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So I think that I did it in the right order, and I'm going to keep doing that. But this is going to play, and I'm going to bring up some things. I'm going to readdress I think addressing one specific situation with her is good, because otherwise she overviews too well. So thank you again for coming on. And
Thank you for having me.
okay, 1 minute.